Today on Titan Town, we're going to install an AFE Power Magnum Stage 2 cold air intake. Now this is a clip that I recorded over a year ago, and now I'm going back just to edit it and improve on it. Now some tools you're going to need are a 10mm socket, an 8mm socket, a pair of pliers, and a Phillips screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver will be useful. Now the first step is to remove the stock cold air intake, and I've already gone ahead and removed the engine cover by removing the two 10mm bolts and pulling it off. So next I'm going to move the hose clamps back and remove the two hoses from the intake. And next we're going to move on to the MAF. Just press the clip and pull that off. And now take your pliers and remove the clip holding the wiring harness, and just squeeze the barbs together and pull it out. Now there's also a hose for the front diff. It's a breather hose, and it's got a similar style clip that's attached to the airbox lid. So once we remove the lid, we can remove that clip as well. I've loosened the hose clamp, and now we can pull the lid off. And this is where I'm going to remove the clip for the diff breather. Once that is free, take your lid and set it aside. You can also remove your air filter and set it aside. Now the stock intake system does a pretty good job at providing cold air into the engine. It pulls it from the wheel well. So we're not really going to improve that with this system, but we are going to provide a more direct airflow. The stock system directs air down into the airbox, and then it has a very sharp bend where it comes back up into the air filter, and then another sharp bend before it goes into the air tube. Now this tube that you see where my hand is right now actually from the factory is a lot longer, and I've cut it off to help solve that problem. But the AFE cold air intake is going to provide a nice unobstructed straight flow of air into the throttle body. So next, take your 10mm socket, remove this bolt back here, and then there are two more 10mm bolts on rubber grommets. You can leave the bolts in, and you can just take the airbox firmly with two hands and pull it out. The bolts will stay in the truck, and the rubber grommet should come out with the airbox. So take your airbox and set it aside. Now we can move on to the intake tube. So with the clamps loosened, you can pull your intake tube off and set that aside. Now's a good time to check to see if your throttle body's clean. If it's dirty, get some throttle body cleaner and clean it up. This one was pretty clean. So now everything is removed, we can get our new intake ready for install. We're going to need the two rubber grommets from the bottom of the stock airbox. And then take the two rubber grommets removed from the stock airbox and put them in the holes of the AFE airbox. They go in fairly easily. So once you get that in there, get ready to insert it in the engine bay. So this is where I should have left that one 10mm bolt in, because that rubber grommet will slide right over top of that bolt. So I'm going to reinstall that bolt and get the whole assembly ready to place in there. The whole assembly is one piece, and slide it over the throttle body and rotate it down and slide the rubber grommets over the two bolts, just like so. And give it a bit of a shove to go down, and then you want to reinstall your 10mm bolt at the back of the airbox. Next, we're going to reattach our PCV hoses. So just slide them over the nipples, and then move the clamps forward with your pliers. Next, take a look at everything, make sure everything is snug, there's no leaks or gaps anywhere, and tighten up your gear clamps with your 8mm. And now we're ready for the filter, and that's a big air filter. Now it looks a little funny because it was originally a blue filter, but it was dry when I got it, so I added some red K&N oil. They're both meant for cotton gauze, so it should be fine. And then we've got a nice straight airflow from the wheel well right into the inverted cone of the filter. Go ahead and tighten up any gear clamps you may have missed, including your filter. Any air leaks could result in a check engine light. So you want to have them all tight. Now that the filter is in, we can put the lid on, and there's where the instructions are, but we didn't really need those anyways. Now there's just a few bolts that go through the lid and hold the lid to the airbox. So we had just put the lid on, so that's untight. I've reinstalled my motor cover. I've made sure all of my clamps are nice and tight. So now is the time to transfer your MAF from your old tube. Remember, I kept it in there to keep it safe. So you want to pull it out. Now is a good time to clean it. This is MAF sensor cleaner. Don't use anything else. You don't want any residues on there. So you're going to spray it in the bottom hole. So
that's the direction the air comes in. Spray it in that hole. And the back holes as well. So give this good spray, let it dry out. And you're going to stick it in here. So this kit came with a new gasket. And it also came with spacers. White spacers. So the spacers are going to go under the MAF, and then the screws are going to go over top. And I'm going to keep my old screws safe by putting them back in. And this is the gasket that came on the stock intake. I took it off because it seemed to fit better without that gasket on. And we don't want to lose that if we put the stock intake back on. And the reason you want these tight is because if you get any air after the MAF, you're going to get a check engine light. With this intake, I was getting a check engine light. I think it's because it was over range. There's basically too much airflow on here. So I uninstalled it, put the stock back on. My check engine light went away. And I can diagnose that with my bully dog. My bully dog tells me what the code is, and it can also clear the code. This intake sounds pretty cool. It's a bit loud when you're really giving it gas on the road. So I think it does make it run rich. On the air fuel ratio, it does lower the air fuel ratio, which means it's adding more fuel. So I can tell the difference between the stock and the AFE. But as you can see, it's a nice straight flow, whereas the other one has some bends in it. So the one thing I had to relocate this. That's the vent for the front diff. There's nowhere to put this clip either, so basically you don't need it. You can just leave it hanging because it's clipped here anyways. And the stock had Phillips screws. AFE has flathead screws for the MAF. So I'm just going to put them in and reconnect my MAF. I'm ready to go. All done. See you next time.